Kate Bennett had once been at the top of her field, an expert in material science, working for one of the most prestigious defense companies in the world, StarTech. Her days were filled with groundbreaking research, and her nights were spent calculating the future of technology that could change the world. But all of that had come crashing down after she discovered the dark secret of her company. StarTech wasn't developing technology to protect people. They were selling faulty, dangerous weapons systems that could endanger thousands of innocent lives. The realization hit Kate hard, and she knew she had to leave. Leaving her career, her colleagues, and everything she knew was the only option. Kate vanished from the world of science, disappearing into the anonymity of Manhattan's bustling streets. She took on the most unlikely of jobs, dog-sitting. The quiet life, filled with walking dogs and caring for others' pets, was peaceful. It was her sanctuary, her escape from the constant fear of being hunted down by the very company she used to work for. But peace, as Kate soon realized, never lasts long. She had managed to live under the radar for 2 years, but fate had other plans. It was an ordinary evening when everything changed. Kate was walking her latest charge, a small golden retriever named Max, when she happened to walk past an upscale restaurant, L'Art, known for attracting the elite and powerful. As she strolled along the sidewalk, she noticed a man she instantly recognized. Jack Dawson, a name that sent a shiver down her spine. He was known across industries, not just as a billionaire tech mogul, but as someone with connections that ran deep into the underworld. Kate had heard of him before. His name was whispered in the halls of StarTech, tied to the most lucrative and dangerous deals in the world of cutting-edge technology. What was he doing here, she wondered. Max tugged at the leash, pulling her toward the entrance. The dog's playful bark was a stark contrast to the tension building inside her. Before she could stop herself, she stepped into the lobby of the restaurant, the warmth and quiet luxury a stark contrast to the cold reality she had left behind. Inside, Jack sat at a table near the window, a glass of red wine in his hand. Across from him sat a man Kate didn't recognize, Nikolai, a Russian scientist known for his work in military-grade technologies. They were deep in conversation, leaning in close. Kate's heart raced as she caught snippets of their discussion. They were talking about a formula, something that sounded like the key to the next generation of military defense technology. It took only a few moments for Kate to realize what they were discussing. The formula wasn't revolutionary. It was catastrophic. As she listened closely, her mind raced. The technology they were discussing would fail, and it would fail spectacularly. In just 40 days after deployment, the entire system would collapse, causing a chain reaction that would leave countless lives in danger. The worst part? She knew this formula could be fixed, but only if someone with the right knowledge intervened, and that someone was her. Kate took a deep breath, her pulse racing. She could leave. Walk out of this restaurant, forget she ever saw Jack Dawson, and let someone else handle it. But as she turned to leave, her eyes caught a glimpse of the little girl sitting at a nearby table, Lily, Jack's young daughter. Her eyes were wide and full of innocence, a stark contrast to the dark world her father inhabited. Something inside Kate snapped. She couldn't let this happen. She couldn't let Lily or anyone else pay the price for this flawed technology. Without thinking, she walked toward the table, her steps shaky but determined. "Excuse me," Kate's voice trembled slightly as she approached their table, catching Jack's eye. "I think you need to stop what you're doing," she said, her words cutting through the tense air. Jack's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, there was a flash of recognition. He looked her up and down as if weighing her. "And why would I listen to you?" he asked, his voice cold but not dismissive. "I'm a material scientist," Kate said, meeting his gaze firmly. "The formula you're using? It's defective. It won't work. It will cause a disaster in 40 days. Jack's expression didn't change, but Nikolai looked skeptical. "And what makes you so sure?" he asked, his Russian accent thick. "I know the science," Kate replied. "I can prove it. I've worked on similar technologies before." For a moment, there was silence. Jack glanced at Nikolai, who simply nodded. "You're an expert in this field?" Jack asked, leaning back in his chair, his tone now more curious than dismissive. "Yes," Kate said, trying to steady her nerves. "And if you don't stop this, people are going to die. Your daughter will be in danger." At the mention of Lily, Jack's cold demeanor faltered for a split second, but he quickly regained his composure. He stared at Kate, his eyes narrowing as if searching for something in her face, something he couldn't quite place. "Leave now," Jack said, his voice lower but still commanding. "Before I decide to have you removed." Kate took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. She had done it. She had warned him. But as she turned to leave, she felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. As she exited the restaurant, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just been turned upside down once again. She had stepped into a world she had long since tried to forget. And there was no turning back now. The night air outside Lart was cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth she had just left behind. Kate stepped into the bustling streets of Manhattan, Max tugging at his leash as they walked toward her small apartment. But the weight of her conversation with Jack Dawson lingered in her mind, gnawing at her with every step. She had warned him. She had done what she could. Yet, something told her that was far from enough. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the silence. It was an unknown number. Her heart skipped a beat. The timing was too perfect. Slowly, she pulled the phone from her pocket, her thumb hovering over the screen. Kate Bennett. The voice on the other end was deep, smooth, and unrecognizable. "You've made a dangerous move." Kate's breath caught in her throat. She had been careful, too careful in fact. How had they found her? You can't just walk into a room and confront a man like Jack Dawson without consequences, the voice continued. "We've been watching you. You've caught his attention, and that's not something you walk away from." Kate felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Who is this?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. "Someone who knows exactly what Jack Dawson is capable of," the voice replied cryptically. "And you're not out of danger yet. You've just entered a much larger game. The kind of game that doesn't have winners." The line went dead, leaving Kate standing in the middle of the street, her thoughts spiraling. She had no doubt this was someone connected to Jack. His reputation, his network, it was all tied up in the darker side of the tech world. Corruption, illegal deals, arms sales. And she had just stepped into it. Kate quickened her pace, her mind racing. She had made a decision when she walked into that restaurant, a decision to stop something catastrophic from happening. But this was something entirely different. She wasn't just fighting a flawed formula anymore. She was in a battle against something far bigger than herself. Back in her apartment, Kate locked the door behind her, leaning against it as if it might protect her from the storm brewing outside. Max lay at her feet, his head resting on his paws, unaware of the dangers surrounding them. But Kate knew better. She had lived through enough to recognize when things were about to go horribly wrong. She took a deep breath, trying to shake the anxiety that threatened to paralyze her. There was no going back. She had been right about the formula. She knew it with every fiber of her being. But she couldn't stop thinking about Jack Dawson. He had been cold, dismissive at first, but there had been a flicker of something else in his eyes when she mentioned his daughter, Lily. Her mind flashed back to the little girl, sitting at the table, completely unaware of the dark world her father was entangled in. Kate's warning wasn't just about the formula, it was about the lives at stake. She couldn't let Lily get caught in the crossfire. But the more Kate thought about it, the more she realized something else. Jack was dangerous, no doubt. But he was also a father. And fathers did things for their children that no one else could understand. He had shown a glimmer of humanity. Maybe there was a chance she could work with him, if she could convince him to listen. The phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. This time, it wasn't a mysterious call. It was a message from an unknown number, but the content made her stomach turn. "You've been warned. Leave Dawson alone. Or next time, it won't just be you we're coming for." Kate's heart pounded in her chest. The message was a clear threat, and it wasn't from Jack's people. It was from someone else, someone who had an even more dangerous agenda. The only thing she knew for sure now was that she was in deeper than she'd ever imagined. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the phone in her hand. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. She could walk away. She could disappear again, go back to her quiet life as a dog-sitter and never think about this again. But something inside her refused to let it go. The stakes were too high. And there was one thing Kate knew: she couldn't let Lily suffer because of a mistake Jack had made, or because of her own fear of getting involved. With a sigh, she put the phone down. There was only one choice now. She had to go back to Jack. She had to make him understand that stopping this wasn't just about technology, it was about saving lives. As Kate walked over to her small window, looking out at the neon lights of the city, she knew this wasn't going to be easy. But she also knew that her past, everything she had left behind, had brought her to this point. The quiet life was no longer an option. And if she had to stand up to Jack Dawson to stop a disaster, then that was exactly what she would do. She grabbed her coat and left her apartment, stepping back into the dark world she had tried so hard to leave behind. The game had begun, and Kate was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. The city was alive with its usual chaos as Kate made her way back to L'Art, the upscale restaurant where her confrontation with Jack Dawson had set everything in motion. The neon signs flickered in the distance, casting a dim light across the streets of Manhattan. The buzz of city traffic, the distant hum of conversation, and the occasional horn honking all seemed distant compared to the storm raging inside her mind. Kate knew what she had to do. She had to convince Jack Dawson that the formula he was about to deploy was not just a failure, it was a ticking time bomb. She had to get him to stop, to listen to her, and to take action before it was too late. But in doing so, she was walking straight into the lion's den. If Jack wanted to play hardball, so would she. The risk of failure was too high, lives were at stake, including Lily's. She arrived at L'Art once again, only this time, she didn't hesitate. The maitre d' gave her a polite nod as she entered, and for a moment she felt a flicker of doubt. But she swallowed it quickly. She wasn't here for polite conversation. She was here to save lives. Kate scanned the restaurant. It was bustling with well-dressed clientele, people laughing, eating, and discussing business over expensive bottles of wine. She quickly spotted Jack in a corner booth, his back to the wall as usual. The air around him seemed charged, heavy with power and tension. He was seated alone, which surprised Kate. She had expected him to be surrounded by colleagues or security. But there he was, just as alone as the first time she had seen him. Taking a deep breath, she walked over to the table, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. Jack didn't look up as she approached, his gaze focused on the glass of wine in front of him. It was only when she stood at the edge of the table that he looked up, his sharp eyes meeting hers with a cool, calculating stare. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," Jack said, his voice low and smooth. "I warned you before, Kate. This is dangerous territory." Kate didn't sit. She remained standing, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She wasn't here to argue or make small talk. "I'm not here to play games, Jack," she replied, her tone firm but measured. "I know what you're planning to do with that formula. And you can't let it go through. It's defective. It will fail in 40 days, and when it does, there will be catastrophic consequences." Jack raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued but not yet convinced. "You're still on about this?" he asked, leaning back in his seat. "I already told you, I don't need your help. I have the best scientists working on this." Kate's gaze didn't waver. "And you trust them?" she asked, a slight edge to her voice. "Do you know what's going to happen when it fails? Do you know how many people will be affected? Your entire tech empire could crumble in the blink of an eye." Jack's expression remained neutral, but Kate could see the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. He had always been in control, always had the power, and yet here she was, standing in front of him, telling him his empire could fall apart. He didn't like that. Not one bit. "I don't know who you think you are, Kate," Jack said, his tone turning colder. "But you don't understand the stakes here. This formula, it's not just about making a new military device. It's about securing my company's future. My daughter's future." At the mention of Lily, Kate's heart skipped a beat. This was the opening she had been waiting for. "That's exactly why I'm here," she said, her voice softer now. "Jack, you don't have to do this. You don't have to risk everything, including Lily, for something that will fail." Jack stiffened at the mention of his daughter, but he didn't look away. "You think I don't know the risks?" he said, his jaw tightening. You think I don't care about Lily? But I'm doing this for her. This is the only way to secure her future, to protect her. Kate took a step closer, her voice lowering. And what happens if this formula fails? What happens when people start dying? What happens when Lily's life is in danger, just because you were too stubborn to listen? For a long moment, there was silence between them. Jack stared at Kate, his gaze intense, as if weighing her words carefully. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the battle between his desire to protect his empire and his love for his daughter. Finally he spoke. So what do you want from me, Kate? Do you think you can just waltz in here, tell me to shut everything down, and I'll listen to you? What's in it for you? What's your angle? Kate's heart pounded as she thought of her next words. She wasn't here for personal gain. She wasn't here for money, for fame, or for power. She was here because she couldn't stand by and let this happen. I'm here because I want to make sure Lily is safe, she said quietly. And because, for the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. Jack stared at her for a moment longer, then sighed. You're a hell of a lot more persistent than I gave you credit for, he muttered. But you don't understand how deep this goes, Kate. You're playing with fire. I know exactly what I'm doing, Kate said, standing tall. And I'm telling you, stop now. Or we'll both have blood on our hands. Jack didn't respond right away. He sat back in his chair, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the table as if lost in thought. The silence stretched on, but Kate held her ground, knowing this was the moment that would determine everything. Finally, Jack stood up, his tall frame casting a shadow over her. You're right, he said quietly. I don't know if I can stop it, but I will look into what you've said. Kate's breath caught in her throat. You're listening? Jack gave her a sharp look. For now. But don't get any ideas. You're not in control here, Kate. You never were. Kate didn't reply. She knew that Jack was far from convinced, but for the first time, she saw a crack in his armor. She had planted the seed of doubt, and now it was up to her to make sure it grew. As she turned to leave the restaurant, Kate knew that this was far from over. She had stepped into a dangerous world, but she also knew that if she didn't keep pushing, the consequences would be unimaginable. She had one chance to stop the disaster, and she wasn't going to let it slip through her fingers. Kate stepped out of Lart, the cool night air hitting her face like a splash of cold water. Her heart was still pounding, her breath shallow as she tried to process what had just happened. Jack had listened, but she knew it wasn't enough. There was something more, something deeper, that she hadn't yet uncovered. Jack had shown her a glimpse of doubt, but she could see in his eyes that he wasn't ready to pull back from the edge just yet. The stakes were higher than she had realized. The city streets around her hummed with the usual energy of Manhattan, but Kate felt like she was moving through a fog. Her mind was spinning with all the things she had just learned, and all the things she still didn't know. What was Jack's real connection to this formula? Who was pulling the strings behind the scenes? The mystery felt like a knot tightening in her chest, one that she couldn't untangle alone. As she walked down the block toward her apartment, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't an anonymous message. The screen read, Jack Dawson. Kate hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello. Kate, Jack's voice came through, calm but laced with something darker. We need to talk. Meet me at my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't bring anyone. And don't make any sudden moves. You're in deeper than you realize. Kate's stomach dropped at his words. There it was again, the feeling that she was being pulled into a game she didn't fully understand. But she didn't have a choice now. She couldn't back down. Not when Lily's safety was on the line. I'll be there, she said, her voice steady despite the tension in her chest. Good, Jack replied. See you tomorrow. The line went dead. Kate's mind raced as she walked the final steps to her apartment, the door clicking shut behind her. She leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. The next day would change everything. She could feel it. The deeper she dug, the more dangerous it became. Jack had warned her, but he had also made it clear that this wasn't over. She had stepped into something that was far more complicated than a simple military tech failure. The game was bigger than just her, and bigger than Jack. As she paced back and forth in her small living room, Kate realized there was one thing she still didn't understand. what Jack's true motive was. He had shown some vulnerability, some hesitation, when she mentioned Lily. But there was more to it. He was ruthless, calculating, and used to getting what he wanted. That much was clear. But what was really behind his drive to make this flawed formula work? Was it just money, power, and control, or was there something more personal at stake? Her thoughts were interrupted by another buzz from her phone. This time, it was a message from the unknown number that had been sending threats earlier. "You're playing a dangerous game, Kate. Jack Dawson is a man who doesn't take kindly to anyone who threatens his empire. Be careful." The message sent a chill down her spine. The warning wasn't subtle. It wasn't just Jack's people watching her now. It was whoever else was involved in this web of lies and deceit, someone who didn't care about the consequences. She sat down on the couch, running her hands through her hair in frustration. She had to figure out what Jack was hiding. She had to get to the truth, and soon. The next morning, Kate dressed carefully, knowing that this meeting would be crucial. She couldn't afford to let her guard down. She left her apartment and caught a cab to Jack's office, her mind still churning over the possibilities. The building where Jack's company was headquartered was a massive glass and steel structure in the heart of Manhattan. It gleamed in the morning light, a monument to power, wealth, and influence. Kate entered the lobby, her heart racing. The receptionist recognized her immediately and called up to Jack's office. "Mr. Dawson is expecting you, Miss Bennett," she said, her tone professional but somewhat distant. Kate nodded, forcing a calm smile. She wasn't going to let nerves get the best of her now. She had a mission, and she was determined to complete it. She was escorted up to the top floor, where Jack's office was located. The elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek, modern space. Large windows offered a breathtaking view of the city below, but Kate didn't spare a second glance at the view. She was here for business, and nothing else mattered. Jack was standing by the window when she entered, his back to her. He didn't turn around right away, but Kate could feel his presence. There was an intensity in the air, a tension that hummed between them like electricity. "Kate," Jack said without turning around. "I assume you're wondering why I called you here. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. And I'm starting to believe you might be right about the formula. But there's something you don't know." Kate took a step closer, trying to read his body language. "What don't I know?" she asked. Jack turned to face her, his eyes locking onto hers with an unreadable expression. "It's not just about the formula, Kate. It's about control, power, and the people who stand to lose everything if this fails." Kate's pulse quickened. This was it. She was finally going to learn the truth. Jack stepped forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "I've been trying to stop this for months, but there's a faction inside my company that wants to move forward no matter the cost. And they're willing to do anything to make sure it happens." Kate's mind spun with this new information. A faction within Jack's own company? This was bigger than she had realized. It wasn't just about the technology anymore. It was a battle for control over the future and over lives. "Who's behind it?" Kate asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure, but I have my suspicions." Before she could respond, the door to Jack's office opened with a soft click, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, with dark, sharp features and an air of menace about him. His presence seemed to fill the room, and Kate instantly felt the tension rise. Jack's eyes narrowed at the man. "Kate, this is Matteo Russo. He's an old friend." Kate's stomach dropped as she realized this wasn't just a meeting about a flawed formula. It was about a much larger conspiracy, one that would destroy everything in its path. Kate's heart skipped a beat as Matteo Russo stepped into the room. There was an aura of menace around him, something unspoken that made the air feel thick with tension. His cold, calculating eyes swept over Kate with a slight smirk, as if he knew more than he was letting on. Jack, despite his usual unshakable composure, seemed uneasy, a hint of caution in his gaze as he looked between Kate and Matteo. "Old friend?" Kate echoed, her voice steady despite the sudden rush of anxiety flooding her veins. "You're more than just an old friend, I take it?" Matteo's lips curled into a knowing smile, but he said nothing. Instead, he casually took a seat opposite Kate, his gaze never leaving her. The way he looked at her sent a chill down her spine. It was the look of a predator sizing up its prey. Jack's face hardened, and for the first time since Kate had met him, she saw a flicker of vulnerability. "Matteo is part of the reason I called you here," Jack explained, his voice quieter now. "There's a group within the company, people who believe that the formula, despite its flaws, is the key to winning a war that's much bigger than any of us realize. They're willing to take risks, big ones, to make it work." Kate's mind was racing. She had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed was a blow to her. The stakes had escalated far beyond a simple technological failure. This wasn't about a flawed product. This was about power, control, and the lives of innocent people. "Jack, you're not telling me everything," Kate said, her tone firm. "You're talking about a faction within your company, but you're not saying who's behind it. Why not?" Jack exchanged a look with Matteo before speaking again. "Because I don't trust you, Kate. Not fully. Not yet. But I'm starting to think that maybe you're the only one who can help us stop it." Kate's gaze flickered between Jack and Matteo. The tension between them was palpable, and she could sense that there was more to their relationship than just business. This was personal. But what was the connection between Jack, Matteo, and this shadow faction? Matteo broke the silence, leaning forward with a predatory grin. "I think we've all been playing games long enough. You want the truth, Kate? There are people inside this company who are willing to sacrifice anything, anyone, to make this project succeed. And Jack, well, he's been trying to stop it. But the real question is, how far are you willing to go to stop them?" Kate felt her chest tighten. She had no idea what she had just walked into, but there was no turning back now. Jack, despite his cold exterior, was clearly conflicted, and Matteo was someone who played by his own rules. "I'm here to stop the formula from being deployed," Kate said, her voice steady, though her mind was racing. "I'm here because I believe in what's right, and this isn't it." Jack looked at her, his eyes intense, calculating. "That's what I thought. But the people we're up against aren't just businessmen, Kate. They're criminals. And they're not going to let us shut this down without a fight." Matteo chuckled darkly, his voice smooth but filled with venom. "Jack's right, you know. This isn't just a corporate rivalry. You've stepped into a war zone, Kate. And the only way out of it is to win. Or die trying." Kate's stomach twisted at the implications of his words. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. She wasn't just fighting for the lives of innocent people anymore, she was fighting for her own survival. And for the safety of Lily, the child Jack so desperately wanted to protect. "Tell me what you need from me," Kate said, her resolve hardening. "If you want my help, I need to know everything. No more lies. No more games." Jack nodded, his eyes locking onto hers with a mixture of respect and regret. "We need to find the people behind this project, the ones pulling the strings. Matteo has contacts, people who can help us get the information we need." Matteo's smile widened. "And you'll need to get your hands dirty, Kate. This isn't going to be a clean operation. You'll be facing people who won't hesitate to kill to protect their interests. Are you ready for that?" Kate hesitated for only a second. She had always been a scientist, someone who believed in facts and reason. But now, she had to become something else. Someone who was willing to fight for what was right, even if it meant going against everything she had believed in. "I didn't come this far to turn back now," Kate said, her voice firm. "I'll do whatever it takes to stop them." Jack looked at Matteo, then back at Kate. There was a silent understanding between them, an unspoken bond forming in the midst of the chaos. It was clear now that Kate wasn't just a bystander in this game, she was a player. And this battle was far from over. Matteo stood up, his eyes gleaming with dark amusement. "Good. Because it's going to get a lot uglier from here on out." As Kate stood and followed Jack and Matteo out of the office, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking straight into the heart of a storm. There was no telling what lay ahead, but one thing was certain, she was in it now, and there was no way out. The only choice left was to fight.